My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 37 years old, and I'm a project manager for a software development firm. I'd just pulled into my parents' driveway, a casserole dish balanced precariously in my arms, when I saw the black SUV. It wasn't the kind of vehicle you usually saw in our quiet, tree-lined suburb. Two men in dark suits were already on the porch, their knuckles poised to knock. My heart gave a sickening lurch. I knew, with an icy certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this wasn't about a missed utility payment or a neighborhood watch meeting. They introduced themselves as Special Agents Davies and Chen, and the words Federal Bureau of Investigation hung in the air like a sudden frost. My parents, Dad in his gardening clothes and Mom still wearing her apron, looked utterly bewildered. I could feel the heat radiating from the casserole, a stark contrast to the chill that had just entered our home. All I could think was, it finally happened. All the years of my parents pouring everything they had into my sister, Olivia, covering her mistakes, funding her fantasies, had led to this exact moment. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake my parents awake, but I just stood there, the casserole growing heavier, a silent witness to the beginning of the end. What I didn't understand yet was just how deep the rabbit hole went, and how much everything truly meant. To understand why two FBI agents were standing on my parents' porch, you need to know about Olivia. My sister, Olivia, is 40. She's always been the sunshine in my parents' lives, the one who dreamed big, who talked with an infectious enthusiasm that could charm anyone. And my parents, God bless them, believed in her completely. From the time we were kids, it was clear Olivia was special. I was the quiet, studious one, always with my nose in a book, meticulously planning my school projects. Olivia was the artist, the social butterfly, the one who needed support to achieve her potential. That support often translated into money. When I got a used car for my 16th birthday, Olivia got a brand new convertible, to help her express her creativity. When I chose a state university for its excellent engineering program and scholarship opportunities, my parents paid for Olivia to attend an expensive art school across the country, even though she dropped out after a year. They never questioned it. It was always, Olivia needs this, or Olivia has a vision. My personal favorite was the sapphire ring they bought her when she turned 21, a glittering, oversized rock they called her lucky charm. It was supposed to be a symbol of her future success, even though her biggest success at that point was convincing them to pay for a semester abroad she never actually attended. My parents, bless their hearts, were good people. My dad, Robert, was a kind, unassuming man who worked hard as an accountant for a small firm. My mom, Susan, was a stay-at-home mother who poured her energy into making our house a home. They weren't rich, not by a long shot, but they always made sure Olivia had what she needed, and often, what she wanted. I watched, sometimes with a pang of resentment, as Olivia's string of brilliant ideas turned into spectacular failures, each one cushioned by my parents' unwavering financial safety net. Her first real venture after art school was a high-end boutique called Bohemian Rhapsody. My parents mortgaged a portion of their house to get her seed money. I, with my budding project management skills, looked over her business plan. It was full of unrealistic projections, no clear marketing strategy, and an inventory list that seemed chosen more for personal taste than market demand. I tried to gently point out the flaws. Mom, Dad, I'd said over Sunday dinner, the numbers here don't quite add up. And the lease on that storefront is enormous for a startup. My father just smiled. Sarah, your sister has a flair for fashion. You're too practical. She'll make it work. The boutique lasted 8 months before closing its doors, leaving a mountain of debt, which my parents, of course, paid off. Olivia, ever resilient, just shrugged it off, already dreaming of her next big thing. That next big thing was Olivia's Lux Events, an event planning company. This time, they dipped into their retirement savings. I saw the signs again, lavish spending on office decor, an assistant hired before any clients were secured, and a marketing budget that seemed to vanish without a trace. I'd gotten a text from a former high school friend, a florist, asking if I knew Olivia was behind on payments for a wedding she'd coordinated. When I brought it up, My mother's face hardened. Sarah, you always see the negative. Olivia is under a lot of pressure. It's not fair to bring up old gossip. The event company folded within a year, leaving a trail of unpaid vendors and angry clients. My parents, once again, quietly settled the debts, their faces a little more lined there. Smiles a little more strained. Olivia, meanwhile, was already talking about her next venture, her sapphire ring glinting brightly as she gestured wildly. Then came Horizon Innovations. This was the big one. Olivia had found her calling, she said, in tech. She was going to revolutionize the way people connected, or something equally vague. My parents, by this point, had exhausted their savings. But Olivia, ever persuasive, convinced them to take out a second mortgage on their house, a substantial sum, to be the primary investors in her groundbreaking startup. It's a sure thing, Mom and Dad, she'd promised, her eyes sparkling with conviction. This will set us all up for life. I was already working as a project manager, accustomed to scrutinizing budgets and timelines. Olivia, in a rare moment of seeking my practical advice, sent me some early financial projections for Horizon Innovations. I opened the spreadsheet and felt a cold dread. The revenue forecasts were astronomical, completely unsupported by any market research or product development milestones. The expenses section was a black hole of vague categories like operational overhead and strategic partnerships. There was no mention of actual engineers, designers, or a tangible product. I cross-referenced some of the names mentioned as advisors online. One was a known penny stock promoter, another had a history of involvement in failed crypto ventures. I sent Olivia a detailed email outlining my concerns, asking for clarification on the product, the team, the market strategy. Her response was a terse text, "Thanks for your input, but you just don't get the vision, Sarah. This is different." My parents, when I tried to voice my worries again, simply told me I was being overly cautious, that Olivia had learned from her past mistakes. "She's so close to something truly great this time," my dad had said, a hopeful, desperate look in his eyes. I started doing my own quiet research. I couldn't access private company documents, but public records were available. Horizon Innovations was registered in a different state than Olivia claimed, with a P.O. box as its address. The listed CEO was a shell company. There were no patent filings, no significant job postings for technical roles, nothing to suggest a legitimate tech startup. I saved screenshots, printed out a few articles about the advisors Olivia had mentioned, and kept them in a folder labeled Olivia in my home office. I didn't know what I was preparing for, only that I felt an impending sense of doom. My parents, meanwhile, were looking increasingly tired, their house showing signs of deferred maintenance, but they still defended Olivia fiercely, talking about her long hours and groundbreaking work. That was the backdrop to the two men in dark suits on my parents' porch. Agents Davies and Chen were polite, but their questions were pointed. They asked about Olivia, about Horizon Innovations, about the investments my parents had made. My parents, still reeling, tried to explain it away as a legitimate business venture. "She's brilliant, she just needs time," my mother insisted, her voice trembling slightly. But the agents had documents, printouts of financial transactions, and public records that painted a very different picture. They showed my parents' bank statements, transfers, and shell company registrations. I watched as my father's face drained of color. He saw the numbers, the discrepancies, the patterns I had seen months ago but he had dismissed. Agent Davies explained, in measured tones, that Horizon Innovations appeared to be a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Investors were promised impossible returns, with their money being used to pay off earlier investors, and a significant portion diverted to personal accounts. Olivia, they alleged, was not just a victim, but a central figure in orchestrating the scheme. The everything my parents had given her, their money, their trust, their unwavering belief, had been funneled into a criminal enterprise. My parents weren't being accused of anything, but their investments, their second mortgage, were now considered part of the fraudulent assets. They were victims, yes, but also, unwittingly, enablers. The agents spent hours at the house. I stayed, answering their questions about Olivia's past ventures, providing context to her pattern of financial irresponsibility. I even handed over the folder I'd kept, the screenshots and articles I'd collected. It wasn't evidence that would lead to an arrest, but it showed a history, a pattern of behavior that supported their narrative. My parents sat silently, their faces etched with a grief I'd rarely seen. The sapphire ring, the lucky charm Olivia always wore, was mentioned by Agent Chen. Apparently, it had been purchased with funds diverted from the initial Horizon Innovations investment. That detail mattered later. The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations, financial disclosures, and a devastating unraveling of my parents' lives. Their house, the one they had poured their lives into, was now at risk. The second mortgage, initially meant to fund Olivia's future, was now a liability tied to a fraud investigation. Olivia was nowhere to be found. A warrant was issued for her arrest. My parents were crushed, not just by the financial ruin, but by the betrayal. Their golden child, the one they had given everything to, had not only failed them but had actively exploited their love and trust. I helped them navigate the paperwork, found a pro bono lawyer specializing in elder fraud, and started going through their finances. It was heartbreaking to see how much they had sacrificed, how little they had left. The sapphire ring, the one Olivia had flashed so proudly, became a symbol of her deceit. It was among the items the FBI eventually recovered when they finally located and arrested Olivia in a luxury apartment in Miami a few months later. She was still wearing it, defiant, claiming she was misunderstood. My parents lost a significant portion of their retirement savings and had to sell their house. They moved into a smaller, rented apartment, a stark contrast to the home they had built over 40 years. The conversations were strained, often silent. There was no "I told you so" from me, just a quiet, steady presence. They never apologized for their favoritism, but they didn't have to. The look in their eyes said it all. The sparkle, the blind belief, was gone. It had been replaced by a profound weariness. Olivia was eventually convicted of multiple counts of fraud and sentenced to prison. Her lucky charm sapphire ring was seized as part of the restitution efforts, a small, cold comfort. I still visit my parents every Sunday, bringing a casserole, just like I did that day the FBI showed up. The house is different now, the street unfamiliar. But the quiet certainty in my heart remains. Sometimes, giving someone everything means leaving them with nothing.